At a certain point, I just need to trust that knowledge that I already have and be present in the moment, because that's really when the actor is doing the real work, I think. I'm sure others would disagree and say, no, the work comes beforehand, so that when you're acting on set, it's just free expression and what have you. But for me, being present there in the moment and considering my function within the story we're telling is sort of what it's all about.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
On the occasion of his new series, Single Parents, premiering on September 26th, and his new movie, Night School, opening on September 28th, I sat down with actor Taran Killam to talk about the work. I have what I think is probably a misconception about actors doing comedy, which is that, and you can tell me if this is a misconception, actors approach the preparation for comedy differently than they do drama. You land this role, for instance, Night School. You get the script. The initial process for you of trying to get your arms around how you're going to present this stuff. Are you looking at the material initially in this comedy gaze, instead of just going in like character, objective, first?
Well, I can only obviously speak to my own process,
Yes.
which I don't think is similar for most or common for most, just because I've had a very uncommon career. It's quite varied, and the first decade of it was just jobs for paychecks, and sometimes it was stuff I was proud of, and sometimes it was stuff I was not. I don't know that it's so different in terms of just process, right? In that my process is very instinctual. And I feel that in the reps that I've done, having been, making a living doing this for almost 2 decades now, that I can tell, I have a very good sense of story as a whole. What is the piece of the story that I'm responsible for as an actor, right? And that's true of comedy, and that's true of drama, and the piece of it. I've never been good at, going there and wearing the skin, and maybe later in life I'll be presented with opportunities to do that, to be like, no, let's delve into this guy, let's become this guy. But for me, I'm more aware of the purpose of the role in the story as opposed to who the person is in real life,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think that applies in equal parts to comedy and to drama. And it really comes down to just being present, right? Of understanding the broad strokes, the general. I'm the bad guy in Night School for the most part. I'm, the nemesis. Yeah. And I get that energy, and I get that this is an uptight guy, and I know Kevin Hart fairly well, and I know his rhythms, and I know what that's going to be. But so I can do as much preparation within that as I want, but at a certain point, I just need to trust that knowledge that I already have and be present in the moment, because that's really when the actor is doing the real work, I think. I'm sure others would disagree and say, no, the work comes beforehand, so that when you're acting on set, it's just free expression and what have you. But for me, being present there in the moment and considering my function within the story we're telling is sort of what it's all about. And that's sort of the best way I can kind of compact or minimalize my process as a whole.
And using Night School as the example, can you just let me in on, I don't know what the process was, they offered you the role or whatever?
No,
We've
I
seen enough of
auditioned
you.
for Night School.
You
Yeah,
did?
I submitted a tape. Yeah, and you sort of...
You submitted a tape.
Yeah, because they were
Taran
casting...
Killam, the guy that I saw for 6 years on
Yes.
Saturday Night Live every week.
Yeah, no, and Understandably so. I've never worked with Malcolm D. Lee, the director, or Will Packer, the producers, and I know that they were familiar, and I had almost worked on a project with Malcolm in the past, but it's also about finding the right pieces, right? You have to know what your project is. So I was very excited because I like Kevin a lot, and I'd worked with him when he'd hosted SNL and very briefly on Wild and Out, and we were aware of each other, and so I'm like, well, that's just going to be a fun thing to do, is work with him. Tiffany, I had become aware of because of Girls Trip, and then I just find her to be one of the most impressive human beings ever. So you hear that package, and you know from a business standpoint, oh, that's a movie that people are going to want to go see, that I want to go see, and I think that should be what the choices are about, right?
Yeah.
But I've very rarely been at a choices stage in my career. It's always been about you're at the mercy of who will hire you, and I think in that it affects your process. I think should I ever be fortunate enough to like be fielding offers and what's the next direction to take my career in, then maybe the process shifts about perception, about experience. But right now it's, what are people going to hire me for? What do I look like? How do people perceive me now? What sort of vibe do I give off? And how can I manipulate that into this role to get me the job, really? So I put it on tape, and I knew that it being a comedy and Kevin and Tiffany and Malcolm, that I could probably play with it a little bit. I think when it comes to dramatic auditioning and process, it tend to be stick to the script a little bit more, unless it's encouraged of like, no, let's find moments in this. But with comedy, I have great confidence in my abilities to get laughs. Yeah. And I know that a great selling tool for myself is going to be add laughs. Here, you gave me sides where I can see sort of the 8 intended laughs. I'm going to send you back a tape with 16. And so I did that, and it worked. I only sent in the one tape because they were casting out of Los Angeles and Atlanta where we shot, and I was here in New York at the time. So I sent in a tape, and then like 6 weeks later, heard that I got the job.
And tell me that 8 laughs, you turned it into 16.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're literally having the guts enough to add lines?
Yes, sometimes, yes.
And you're fine with that because you're like, I know that this is going to be funny. I mean, I'm not just going to do what's on what the sides are.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm confident that they're not going to be like, what did you do?
That this is the right project for that. And sometimes it's not, and sometimes they aren't. And where I have graduated from being at the mercy of someone, and maybe I'm not fully at having all the choices in the world, I have enough under my belt. I have an impressive enough resume. I have enough satisfaction in my body of work that I don't feel the need or desire to get everything that I auditioned for. And if I'm being completely honest, have grown to resent the process of auditioning a little bit, just in the process itself, not in a I'm too good for this or I'm too important,
right.
In that it's just a very flawed process.
Absolutely.
That in reality is already decided just by sight, yeah, right? Just from it truly, headshots should be used more and referenced more. Yeah. So I have a good indicator now, I have a good gauge of like if something's submitted to me of like, 40-year-old military man, I'm like, I don't know that I have a great shot at this, right. But uptight, OCD type A principal who's got 4 chips on his shoulder. Yeah, I can find something to do with that I think could be pretty fun.
And tell me now, you go to the set. Mm-hmm. I'm imagining there's not a time for rehearsal where you're working these things out.
There was actually a good amount of rehearsal for this, which was nice. Wow. Yeah, there's like a whole week where Malcolm brought the cast in, and we would read through scenes, and we'd talk about it, and we'd pitch jokes, wow. And it was a very, very collaborative process. It was really, really a lovely experience.
So you're getting an idea of, I'm asking a question this way because I'm imagining that this is what it is, and you're going to tell me no or yes. But I'm imagining you're like, I wonder if there's room for improvisation. This is Kevin Hart.
I can do that if necessary.
Yes.
If he's going to be somebody that's not going to want that, I can also stick to the thing. You know, you're going there
Correct.
with those two roads
You
that
try
are
to
open.
gauge it. Yeah, you try to read the room for sure.
And so you had an opportunity in that week to see
yes.
beforehand.
Yes, and Kevin is incredibly supportive and encouraging of being loose, improvising, finding new jokes. It's just about, I think when you're a comedian first and actor second, which I think is fair to say Kevin is. I don't necessarily think of myself that way, but Kevin is a comedian, one of the biggest comedians in the world, and a talented actor. But he's looking for laughs, right? He's
Right.
looking for that immediate gratification. The biggest difference between comedy and drama is when comedy's working immediately,
Yeah.
and not so much with drama because silence might be a good thing. So that's encouraging, and Tiffany is just as smart and funny as they come and can keep up. The whole cast was heavy hitters in terms of that looseness, specific to your question of in the moment and improvising and adding jokes and adding lines and the across the board.
And is in that room, was the writer there?
Yes, so this is an idea of Kevin's. The movie idea was Kevin's.
I got you now. Okay, so it's almost like it's a unique situation where one of the actors has kind of like if you deliver a joke in the improv there,
Yes.
that gets put in if
Yes.
Kevin wants it in. I mean, in a way, like
And Malcolm, I'll say,
Yeah.
Kevin was incredibly respectful and deferential to
I
Malcolm,
see,
that
I
it's
see.
Malcolm's set and Malcolm's process. That being said, this is also the first production under Kevin's production company of a studio feature film. This is his company has produced this film, so it's sort of a flagship of sorts for his company. So he's very invested, but at the same time, Malcolm was helming the ship in general, and that's who I would look to first and foremost for too much, too little, just
Gotcha.
right.
Gotcha. And this next question, which fits in here now, I've been trying to ask this question to comic actors that I admire, and I never land it
Remember it?
right. No, I
Oh,
don't
okay.
land it right
Land
because
it,
of
okay.
my.
Again, so much pressure.
This is a
on
lot of
your
pressure, and you
execution.
should feel the pressure
Okay,
now.
great.
Because
Yeah, now it's
I'm
on
going to
me.
mess this up, and you need to flip it back
All right,
and put it back
help-
together.
Help butter it. Yeah, spread
Again,
the butter.
I'm going to approach this in this way. I'm imagining this, and you tell me no, and you can stop me in the middle of this question.
I have to go to the bathroom.
You read the lines, and you know, because you're a smart guy and you have a comedy sensibility, you know the route to the joke based on the line. But I'm imagining that there's another route.
Absolutely. Always.
And, okay.
Multiple.
And sometimes the person in charge is afraid of that route.
Sure.
I'm liking the way this is going, by the way.
You're freaking landing this. Don't botch the dismount.
Oh, I'm about to, because I really shouldn't have fucked that. Basically, I want to talk about when can you offer that path? Are you free to offer that path? Like, it sounds like there was a week ahead of maybe that path can come up during that week.
Right, sure.
But often there's not that. So I want to talk about the times when when you're showing up on set and they're like,
I think I can
Go.
give a specific example to your question, or what I believe the question is. Having Frankenstein your question into a living being. There's a specific line. There's a game that's in the script. My character Stuart is a very white individual at a mostly African American school, and now is the principal of that school and has what do they call it? Code switching. Have you heard this term? Code switching? It was new to me too. Code switching meaning when you are of a different race, but you're immersed in a certain culture that you'll code switch and take on mannerisms, aphorisms, things like that.
Yeah.
So Stewart does a black voice, but Stewart doesn't think he does a black voice, but it's pretty clear, and that's the game, and that's the joke.
Yes.
I found that in initially reading the script a familiar trope, right? Of like white person trying to be black. I've seen a good amount of times, and I've seen done really well too.
Yeah.
And even in Malcolm's film before, Kate Walsh, she does that. She's the boss, and she's like, "You go, girl," and stuff like that.
Right.
So I was just a little hesitant, and I wanted to find a new path in, right? And to me, there's always sort of a self-conscious element to it in versions I've seen before of like, yo, my brother, and kind of chuckling, knowing the intention. But to me, what was interesting and what I hoped to accomplish was absolute sincerity. And like, this is how I talk, and sometimes I do that, but that's my tough voice, and it has nothing to do with being black.
Yeah.
And explaining that to Malcolm, and in that week of rehearsals, not wanting, you never want to criticize in a way where you feel you're saying this is bad, because it's not. It's just, I tried to do my best to propose, I want this to be fresh, as possible.
It's not, the other stuff is old. Let's just say that.
Or established, or familiar is a word I like to use. Familiar.
Yeah.
But I think anytime you go, hey, I'm going to do a different anything, it is the director's job to scrutinize, right? To really judge it and weigh it and assess. And then on the day we're doing the scene, and it's the first exchange where Kevin's character says, like, you're doing a black voice. And I said, and I was just coming up with a lot of alts for, no, not a black voice. In fact, absolutely not a black voice. And just the response of that, and trying to find the jokes in there versus what was written, which was just very simple, like, I don't do a black voice. And I was really tickled by the idea of I don't hear color. Because I find that I don't see color, a very familiar thing. So I would throw that in. And I threw it in like twice, and Malcolm came and he's like, let's do one without that. And we did another take without that, right? So I feel like I've finally gotten to the point that addresses your question of the path. And this is obviously more specific to literally a line of dialogue than a character choice maybe. But from a comedic standpoint, I knew that line was funny.
Yes.
I knew that line captured and paid off what I was trying to do, was a good joke in the scene, was something we hadn't really heard before, but was just close enough to something very familiar that it was right. So after doing the take where we took it out, I went back to Malcolm and I said, I really like that line. I think that works. Where normally I'm okay to like improvise something and move on, because they got it, right? And they could have had it. But that was one I felt confident enough to go, think about it, and this, and here's why, and get to explain, and also it helped me to do the reps of the multiple takes of doing the line to go, no, that feels right instinctively. And he heard me, and he's like, great, yep, totally. And it was like one of the first lines they used in the trailer. And that was like a nice validation of like, yeah, okay, because it's tough. You can trust your instincts, and you can do what you think is funny. I wrote and directed and starred in an entire film that I'm very proud of, that I find very funny, but like sort of fell on deaf ears a little, like half people, I have gotten a lot of great feedback, but also have gotten a ton of like, this is not what we want. this is not a success. So, but I go back and watch it and go like, no, that's the movie I wanted to make, and I love it. So sometimes, my point being, sometimes fighting for your instincts and trusting in it won't pay off. But this was one time where it did.
What about when you're on a set and they don't want to go down that road? Right.
There's two aspects to that. There's the artistic side, which is like if you're working and you're collaborating strictly for an artistic vision, and you just vehemently disagree about something strong and something important, although I think in collaboration you have to be willing to let go or say wrong or you know what I mean, to yes and somebody else's thing or trust. Then if it just is like a line in the sand, then you walk away.
Yeah.
But I think that's an extreme, and I think that's pretty rare that anybody's doing something just for artistic reasons. And if they are, they probably have great ownership in it,
Right.
because that bleeds into the other side, which is about the structure and the hierarchy of a set, of a show, of a project. And at a certain point, you have to understand the business side, which I was hired on Night School as an actor, and I was hired on Single Parents as an actor. I am writing constantly, and I hope to direct again soon, and those are aspirations that I have, and I have energy, and I know when I do those, I can do it my way, win or lose. But when I am hired as an actor, at a certain point, I have to relinquish, right? I have to, because it isn't my job to decide definitively what this show is.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's my job to portray and represent this part of the story again. And with Single Parents is a good example. Jason Weiner is the director of our pilot, and he's directed 3 episodes now after of the batch we've done. And I really trust him. And you have to find that too. You just trust him, and whatever instinctively, sometimes what I instinctively find really funny and great, he will come and say, I don't know if that's right. And he will push back. But what's great about Jason is that for the first time in a long time, he will offer a new path, right? I think it can become very frustrating and constricting when somebody says, I don't like that, let's find something else, because then you're like, well, you're saying no, but you're not coming up with a solution.
Right.
And Jason is really great about coming up with a solution. And to his credit, will say, I don't know if that feels right, here's a solution, we try it, and equal amounts of time he'll come back and be like, nope, you were right, sorry, we tried it. But we do live in this digital era now where film is not precious, and you can do every variation, you can do as many paths as you can within reason for schedule and not driving your first AD mad. But
Right.
You have that opportunity, and that's nice. And what's really fun on Single Parents is living with a character for this amount of time, just the same guy, the same character, still very much discovering and learning what J.J. Philbin, the creator, and Liz Merriweather, co-creator, what they sort of see for the character, what the writers are coming up with for the character based on the pilot, the synopsis, the arc of this show itself, and that big story we want to tell. And my strengths and who I am as a human being off camera, because I think a TV role becomes a little more personalized, much more so than film. And that's been really fun and really challenging in a good way of keeping it fresh. We've only been ordered for 13 episodes, and if anybody likes it, hopefully it'll be more than that. So to keep things fresh,
Right.
but at the same time being told, all right, keep it fresh, but you can't change who you are or any details of your character ever, and you have to find new ways to explore and reveal new aspects of yourself. Go. is cool, and I'm really, really relishing the opportunity.
Is it true that Saturday Night Live kind of prepared you for any kind of situation you're not afraid of anything now? Am I right?
It's true. It's true. I don't know about anything, but it is, there is nothing like it, and most likely never will be. It is the best training for comedy. You're working with the sharpest, funniest, best comedic minds, available for the most part. You know what I mean? They really do seek out the best of the best of the best, and compile that many. You've got a cast of anywhere to 10 to 14, and then a writing staff of at least 14, all equally brilliant, all equally funny in their own ways. And you're just in the trenches. And then the other boot camp element, the best training I think for anything, is the production training of it. You are putting on a live show now with 3 to 4 pre-tapes minimum every week. So you're shooting Thursday, Friday, single camera, hopefully sleeping, and then doing a live show Saturday night, 90 minutes. it teaches you every aspect of it: the writing, producing, wardrobe, hair, makeup, set design, logistics, why some things can be done in that time, why some things can't, the cost of things, what plays in front of a live audience versus what plays, digitally pre-tape. You have a little more freedom there to play with it, because you also how important editing is. A live sketch can and has been blown, or at least a joke been blown, because the right cut isn't made at the right time.
Yeah.
And with the pre-tapes, you have a little bit more control with that, right? Now on a much shorter scale. So sometimes we definitely put up shorts that we shot for the 8 p.m. dress show that were not finished by half, and it's crazy. It's a real,
Wow.
It's fun. There's nothing like it. It's organized chaos, and yes, and so it gives me great confidence with projects moving forward. The other thing that it does is it's now a 43-year institution. So I don't have to say, on SNL, most of the time people are aware of the show, and most of the time people are aware of my time on the show.
Right.
So that carries its own gravitas that does the work for me, where a producer, a writer, a director who is working with a first-time actor who's never done anything is maybe going to manhandle and micromanage a bit more, is probably more often than not going to be like, well, how do you see it? What do you think? To, and be open to my interpretation.
Because you're not just an actor, because you're a writer too, because you're a director, is this 5th season of Single Parents going to be a blessing or a curse for you?
Hear me now, believe me later, and you can throw this in my face if you want, if I'm that lucky. Absolute blessing. Because more than any of those things, I'm a husband and a dad first, and that's the most important, gratifying. It's just my life. It's just my reason for living. It's just what I look forward to more than anything else. And flipping over to the business side of things, working on a show which thus far is with a cast that I genuinely love to spend time with a creative team that I trust and respect and feel taken care of by, and then the stability that this project grants me, that Single Parents grants me, to be in the same city for a majority of the year, to most often have half a day off in the week where I can drop off at school, I can pick up from school, I can make dinner, make a meal, I can help do a load of laundry, just be living my real life.
Yeah.
That's a jackpot. That's a jackpot. And if I were Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and got everything I ever wanted, I'd get to do this show for however long people enjoy it and love it, and every second or third summer get to make a project of my own, something that I'm excited about, and what could be more wonderful.
Taran Killam, thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter.
So much for this.
Yeah,
I really
pleasure,
appreciate
man.
this.
Yeah, blast. I hope to.
A lot of fun.
Let's do it again.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. It's produced by Spencer Rain. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.